Hi. Yeah, I don't know who this is gonna be for, but I felt like I should come and do one because, I actually don't really have like a super great thing up for it. Um, I don't know, dudes. You know what? I've been feeling for a few days like he's wanting to come and like talk to people about grief. You know, because I feel like, you know what? Actually, here, hold on. Well, I'll do a reading and maybe I'll just do it as a separate video and I'll like stream in the background like charts that show like vibrations and their amount. But everybody always rates grief down with like the heartbreak and sadness, right? Dudes, I made a tea and it is so good right now. I'm just saying. So, but my point is that because I feel like grief gets really mislabeled, miscategorized, and like, because here's the thing about grief, right? Everybody wants to act like grief is just sadness. Well, first of all, your sadness in and of itself is not a negative emotion. And it's not a bad emotion. It is a human emotion. And it is the part of, like, have you guys ever, there's a Pixar movie called Inside Out. And if you haven't watched this, I really recommend you watch it. Because the whole premise of that movie is like all the emotions are a character, you know? And so we see sadness. And so she gets kind of marginalized because compared to the other emotions, they perceive her as just a feel bad. But your sadness is not a negative. You know, like if something hurts you, like, yeah, okay, pain doesn't feel good, but your sadness is also your ability to have compassion and have empathy towards other people, to feel the meaningfulness in a situation. Like, it's our sadness that gives nostalgia, right? And any of those things, you don't want to stay in it all the time, just as like you're never going to stay in any other emotion all the time. Because if you stay in one emotion all the time, you're unbalanced. Even people who try to make it seem like they're nonstop happy all the time and never feel negative emotions, you know that's not real. Everybody experiences negative emotions sometimes. That is part of being a human being, because sometimes life isn't fair and sometimes life sucks. And especially like if you have to go through a dark night of the soul. Oh, excuse me. What do they call those? Spiritual belches or something? Jeez. So like, you know, but like if you're going through a lesson in life, and it's like you do need to learn that, and that sadness you experience is gonna teach you something. So your sadness is necessary. You need that. And like your anger is there to let you know when people are violating your boundaries and when people are doing things to you that's not right. It's like a signal to you that lets you know that you need to maybe review your boundaries. What's going on in this situation? How is this not fair to you? You know, if it is a situation where maybe you're having anger that's toxic, it's like, at what point did this become toxic and why is that? And that's where your shadow work would be at, right? So like all of your feelings are telling you something. But grief is different, because grief, especially when your grief is for a loved one who has passed away, understand we call it grief and it feels heavy and it feels like a heartbreak, but really, at the end of the day, that grief is love. And love is the highest vibration on all of the charts. So, like, I feel that for people to rate grief as being down in the red, like, like that's why I feel like maybe I should swap this instead of doing a reading. Share a screen that has the picture of these charts. But if you're a starseed or you're somebody in the higher consciousness community, you're gonna know what I'm talking about, because every single one of these charts, they also go like a rainbow, like your chakras, right? And the red is your root. And your chakras can't be in alignment without your root. You cannot be a complete and fully tuned, highly ascended, high vibrational being without your root, right? Because your root is what keeps you grounded. So you can't just disregard all of like, so that kind of means, like, to a certain perspective, that even some of your low vibrational feelings you feel sometimes, those low vibrational feelings will ground you. Because, sometimes, like, if you're somebody like me, or somebody like these other star seeds and earth angels and chosen one peoples who spend a lot of time in these higher spirituality communities, it's like when you get up into all this woo woo, and especially like in the meta consciousness and the cosmic consciousness, and then we start getting onto these other things, sometimes it can almost, like, depending on how you experience life, kind of almost give you a sense of disassociating from your root. And, so it's like, but you don't want to turn into a balloon that floats away, right? So you need that grounding that keeps you, because don't lose your body. Don't let nobody, just remember that your body was made for you for this life so that you can complete whatever it was you agreed to before you manifested into this body. And, so you need your body. So don't throw away your body and turn around and then become a floating spiritual balloon, where you're just a balloon that's just floating through the cosmos with no grounding. You still need the grounding. It's still important. It still matters. Okay? All of it matters. It's not just one thing. Like, some people will rate some things as being more important. Yeah, because you want to be up there, because those are the vibrations where we're going to start being able to manifest and assist the earth at multiple levels. But the grounding still matters, because at the end of the day, like, all those things we want to do to help the earth and to help mankind, what does that even matter if none of that's manifested in a way that's grounded for everyday people to be able to realize and to come into this realization, right? Yeah. So obviously, and also, like, so, like, when we're talking about grief, when somebody you love passes away, it's like, or sometimes it's not even always out of necessarily, like, death, like the end of their life. You know, sometimes we have experiences with people where it's like the last time you see them, you don't know it's the last time you see them, but for whatever reason, their circumstances or the way things align in their life and where you are at and your timelines has separated, and so you're now never, like, meeting up on the same timeline anymore, and you never know when that day has come. So it's like, and then, like, we experience loss and grief with that, because it's like this person that we really cared about and valued, you know. And sometimes also, if you go through a situation where people have betrayed you to the level that it's like you can no longer have these people in your life, there needs to be a complete severing, and while we work on forgiving ourselves and loving ourselves through it, there's also the understanding that there will be grief with that. And you know what? You have every right to grieve, because you had love for somebody and now that love has nowhere to go. And everybody is going to, by default, tell you to redirect that inward and love yourself, which I'm sure when you hear that, right, you probably think, well, duh, of course. Yes, that is ideally what I would like to do all day, every day. Like, if I was able to so easily do that, would I not be doing it already? Thank you so much for your astute observations about how I need to love myself when I'm already over here trying to love myself. But when we lose people and the love we used to give to somebody can no longer go that way, there is a sadness that comes with that. And it's natural and it's normal. And you have every right to feel that way. And nobody has the business to come into your life and tell you how you should feel about something, how you should process your emotions, and also like the time frame you need to be on to get through that. Like everybody gets through it in their own time frame. Okay? Like, you know, some people, they can take a couple weeks off work and then go back to the rest of their life. Like, okay, well, I'm just living life, you know, and that's fine and dandy. But if somebody else needs like years to process that, that's also valid. And that's okay. I mean, ultimately, the goal should not be to live in your grief for forever. You know, life goes on. And while we're taking that time to grieve, life is not stopping. So, like, while we grieve, other people are going to keep living their lives. So, when we're ready to resume, the people we left when we were in our heartbreak, they may not be there in the same spot anymore. You know, it really might not be. But, you know, and that's okay. That just means that now you're on this different path. And it's okay to grieve. It's okay to grieve for all the futures you never got to have with somebody, for all the promises that were never fulfilled with somebody, you know, um, or relationships that don't work out. You have the right to grieve these things, and nobody has the right to come in and tell you how to feel about it or how you shouldn't feel about it. How you act on it, of course, is different. You know, none of us have the right to abuse people as an extension of that. But, you know, and there comes a point where it does spill over into toxicity, you know, and or you may also need help, you know. And if you need help dealing with it and can't deal with it on your own, there's absolutely no shame in getting therapy or counseling or anything of that sort, you know. Sometimes it can be expensive in some places. So if that's a reason, you know, you can always look into resources. Like different states have different resources. You know, the United States is like a republic. So since most things don't operate at a federal level, they operate on your local and state level. So then you would just have to like look into what's out there that can maybe help you out with that. So there are programs around, you know, where I live, that they're really only applicable if they can bill through Medicaid. So, um, you know, but never be ashamed of that. Or even like a couple years ago, when I was really going through the end of my dark night of the soul, for a while I was on, oh man, I forget the name of it, but it was like an antidepressant. I forget the name of it now. But I was on it for a little while. I was on it for like a year and a half, almost 2 years. And then my doctor took me off of it. So every now and then he'll ask me if I want it again. But, you know, it did give me some weird side effects when I was weaning off of it. So since then, I have been turning to doing more DBT, which is like a dialectical behavioral therapy, which focuses on mindfulness and is a mindfulness. I'm working on breath work and grounding techniques, you know, and making sure that I'm not like disassociating from myself. And I just want to talk about this because like I'm somebody like over the past few years, sometimes I get times where I feel like my only one true companion in life is grief. Like, uh, like sometimes I'll date things back to like 10 years ago when my dad died, but really like 10 months before my dad died, my grandpa Pelt passed away. But I mean, like when I was a kid, when I was really young, when we like uh when I was like in the third grade, my parents had bought this house, right? And the house had a pool. But when they bought the pool was super gross and it wasn't ready yet. Well, anyways, like I think the summer after we moved in, while we were away at the mall on a hot summer day, we came back and the younger sister of my friend down the street had thrown our cat into the pool and our cat drowned. And I was so like devastated. I was super devastated. I was just super heartbroken and crying. My parents sent me to a friend's house for a few days until they got the cat out and had her all prepped for burying. And then they brought me back home and we had a little funeral for her um and then there was one time after that, like a year or two later, like me and my brother had gotten these other cats to replace her, and his cat had like this whole bunch of things happen to him, and in the end, they were gonna have to take him to be put down. And even though that was my brother's cat, like, yeah, I gotta tell you, like, that made me really sad as a kid too. So like that day, my mom let me like leave school early, and I went with them to like take him to be put down at the Humane Society, and my mom let me walk around the room to like see the other animals and stuff, and um you know, but I remember even as a kid, like losing the animals was always like a huge grief. And I just feel like, the thing people need to realize about grief is that it's not just a normal sadness, dudes. That is love. It's love. And like you had love for somebody, and now that love that you used to give somebody can't go to that person anymore. So now you need to redirect it. And even though redirecting it inwardly towards yourself would be the correct answer, like, you know, sometimes, especially like if you're somebody who has borderline personality disorder and or other cluster B personality disorders, sometimes people with personality disorders do not have a central sense of self. So the idea that they're just going to pour love on themselves, well, they already don't have the central sense of self. So how are they supposed to love that sense of an energy when they don't have it? They can't identify with that singular sense of self. So then they're not able to properly love themselves. And so, of course, this is, of course, the root of everything that has to do with all of their disorders, right? But whether you approve of it or whether you want to like stigmatize them or talk about it, it is what it is. That's their situation. If that's you in your situation, you may feel like, wow, well, it's hard to apply love to the situation because I have a lot of work to do with my internal sense of how I value myself and how I want to show up in the world, or how I think people see me and how I feel about that. And, so maybe the thing to do in the face of grief when you feel like that, the thing to do there is just to start exploring new things, because if you've been in that heavy energy, especially like if it's been depression, if you've gone through times of like where nothing starts to feel good anymore, because that happens. Like if you stay in your grief too long, then yes, it does lead you into depression, and that can get really hard to get out of. So because what happens with that is that when you get depressed, it basically drains all the joy. So all the things that you used to do that would have given you that mental and emotional boost to feel better, it's not going to make you feel better because all the joy was drained out of it. So now you need to have new sources of those things. So, and that's going to require you to be willing to do some exploration, to try new things. You're going to have to like go into the unknown and do things different. Because I can tell you this right now, if you are depressed from grief and you're not willing to change anything in your life whatsoever from top to bottom, beginning and end, then you're never going to come out of that depression. Because that depression is going to keep eating you because you have to cover it with, like, that love needs to flow. That love is like a river, and that river got dammed up, but it needs to break open because it's going to overflow. Like, the amount that that dam is holding up inside of you, it is at capacity and it cannot hold anymore. So we need to create openings to relieve that pressure. And you're going to do that by finding joy. You need to find joy. And these sources of joy can come from anywhere. And I'm not talking about substance abuse because that's not true joy. Those are just gonna be a dopamine fix, but in a couple days, it's gonna wear off, and you're just gonna need it all over again. You know, and I'm gonna be honest. Even though I do have a central sense of self, I sometimes struggle with joy as well because the things I went through, especially towards the end of my dark night of the soul, it was draining the joy out of everything. And sometimes still, like every now and then, like I'll go through some cycles that are necessary for me to have, like, to continue my ascensions, and they wake up my gifts. But sometimes, like, the things that I found joy in before going through that no longer work and have to find something else. Because basically what you're going to need to do is you need to alchemize your experience and feelings into something else. So, like, if you get into writing or art or something where you can take those feelings and create something with it, then you will alchemize all that grief into something beautiful. And that's what you should be doing with it. And then at the end of the day, like, all that grief you had was not for nothing. Now other people who grieve and see your art and they connect with the things that you made, they feel that part of themselves too. Because at the end of the day, our humanity is bound up in the humanity of each other. And if we disconnect from that, then we'll never feel good. Because no man is an island, right? Like, even like a lot of us, like, I'm a Virgo, and Virgos, we're really good at being hermits and going off and isolating and being by ourselves. But you can't be completely alone all the time for 100% of your life. At some point, the humanity in you, humans are social creatures. You're going to want to reconnect with other people and rebuild up these meaningful connections, And you need to take time and cultivate that meaningful connection within yourself. And it's okay to, like, that part of you that hurts from losing people, maybe find the you, like your 5-year-old self. Like, imagine the you that you were when you were 5 years old and find that part of you inside. And then think about what that 5-year-old you, their feelings towards that person, and what's the one thing you remember the most about that person? What was it that made you love them so much? Or that gave you a sense of comfort? Like, what did you love about them? And find a way to encapsulate that and immortalize that. Because that's the part that you can alchemize, and it's going to do a lot to help you with healing that heartache. And one day, that grief and that heartache, the pain will start to lift and evaporate, and it will eventually feel like love again. And that's when it turns into nostalgia, because, like, that nostalgia really is the love that you had for that person in that time, you know? And that'll be a special place in your heart that kind of almost it's like a shrine within your heart. And you just make space for it. You know, you make space for it. It can't take over your life because you have to return to life, but it'll always be a part of you. And that's good. And that's okay. And never let anybody make you feel bad about that. Because no one has the right to make you feel bad about that. I don't know. I meant to do a reading, and I got talking about this because I wanted to talk about it. So I guess I'm just going to save it like this, and then I don't know if I'm going to do a reading or not. I don't know. I haven't been doing them as often lately because I just don't feel led to. Usually I do them when I feel led to. Sometimes I do readings as a form of energetic tithing since I consume spirituality content as well, you know? So, but that's it. If you actually listen to all of this, then thank you very much. I don't expect anybody to actually listen to all of it because most people don't listen to the whole of my videos. So, I don't know. It's just a rant, I guess, you know. But it's just a message about grief and your feelings. Value your feelings. Don't let other people tell you how to feel. Don't allow other people to tell you what you should be doing with your feelings. You know, all your feelings are there for a reason. Even your ego, like sometimes we'll talk about how some people need to take an ego death. And while that's true, it's like you don't need to get rid of your ego 100% because your ego is like there to help you sustain a genuine sense of self-worth. But it's just the fact that like sometimes it gets out of balance, you know, and then it gets toxic because like we just get stuck there doing that, you know. So um so I'm just sending lots of love and light, and maybe I'll do more topics where I'm talking about these issues that affect people with personality disorders, because you know what, if you really want to hear what my personal opinion on personality disorders, especially like cluster Bs, is that they're actually neurological disorders. They're people with the trauma that happened early in life remapped our neural pathways. And so it's like, it's not just a pathological behaviors. Like, obviously, narcissists or the anti-socialism is like, it's like, there can be some of that in there, but I feel like that's just a byproduct, you know? Like, it's like my son has autism, you know? And at one time, autism used to be considered a mental disorder. And now we know that it's the neurology. And I feel like, you know what? The cluster Bs are also, it's something, it's a neural divergence. Like you weren't born that way, but you went through something that rewrote the nerves, the system in your body. And now your neuropathy works totally different. And you need to get acquainted with that, with how it works, and find a way to make it work for you. And find ways to support yourself internally to nurture your heart and your mind. You know, people like to act like our heart, mind, and body are all these separate things, but they're not. They're all part of a team. You're one team, and you have to let all the parts of you participate together as a team, because nobody's greater than the team. Like, I'm a big Michigan Wolverines fan, you know, and we had that coach Schembeckler, and he always used to about the team. No coach is greater than the team. No player is greater than the team. There's no staff member, anybody who's ever going to be greater than the team. It's about the team. And I like this idea for like your sense of self. It's a team. It's a team effort. You have your body, your heart, your mind, your soul. It's like all these aspects of you, your child aspect, your grown adult aspect. You're a team and you're one. And your goal should be to be into oneness, you know, because if you're healed, then you're in your oneness, right? You know, so but when you get fragmented, then that means you need to go and do more healing, which I feel like I do still need to do more healing myself. But and that's also to encourage you, if you even still make it this far, you know, don't give up on yourself, because sometimes healing takes a while, and sometimes it's not pretty. And I just want to wish you love and good luck.